You've been lied to, not always with words, but with silence, half-truths, and perfect little stories. You think you know her past, but what if the version she gave you was built to control how you see her? Socrates said the unexamined life isn't worth living, and that includes relationships. In this video, we're exposing the 5 lies every woman tells about her past and showing you how Socratic thinking cuts through the performance. If you've ever felt something was off but couldn't explain why, stay locked in. What you're about to learn might change the way you date forever. Socrates believed that people often lie not out of malice, but out of ignorance. They don't know themselves deeply enough to face the truth. Many women lie about their past not to harm others, but to shield themselves from judgment, rejection, or emotional exposure. These lies are walls built out of fear, not evil. But no matter how pretty the wall, it still blocks intimacy. The more one hides, the harder it becomes to be truly known. When a woman edits her past, she's often protecting the image she wants to maintain, not just for you, but for herself. She might downplay past relationships, gloss over betrayals, or omit uncomfortable truths. Socrates would say this is the soul defending its illusions. The problem is, these illusions become the foundation of a false connection. And when truth finally cracks through, trust collapses with it. Socrates challenged everyone to confront uncomfortable truths, especially about themselves. In modern dating, many men avoid digging deeper because they fear seeming insecure or controlling. But Socrates would ask, is it better to live with a pleasant lie or an uncomfortable truth? Emotional protection through lies only delays the pain, it doesn't erase it. And avoiding the truth only gives it more power when it finally shows up. If a man wants a relationship rooted in reality, he must be brave enough to question what sounds too smooth or too curated. Not with aggression, but with the calm, sharp curiosity of a philosopher. When Socrates asked questions, it wasn't to attack, it was to awaken. And in love, that awakening often starts with spotting which lies are told to protect and which truths are worth uncovering. Socrates warned us about confusing appearance with essence. In relationships, many women craft an idealized version of themselves not because they're evil, but because they know perception shapes desire. She may present herself as innocent, low experience, drama-free, but often that image is curated, not earned. It's a mask designed to attract while hiding the chaos underneath. And the more perfect it looks, the more questions you should ask. Men fall for this illusion because they want to believe it. It's easier to love someone who seems clean, safe, and different from the rest. But Socrates would say, stop trusting the surface. Ask what's underneath. When someone avoids talking about their past or changes the subject, that's not modesty. It's control. She's not being mysterious. She's managing your perception. And you're being played by the image, not connecting with the person. This illusion is dangerous because it trains men to silence their instincts. You notice the inconsistencies, but you suppress the questions. Why? Because the fantasy feels too good to risk losing. Socrates called that a form of self-deception. You lie to yourself so you can keep believing her lies. That's not love. That's a shared illusion, and illusions eventually break. The only way to truly know someone is to strip away the masks, not through confrontation, but through calm, curious questioning. Socratic dialogue wasn't about winning, it was about uncovering truth. And in love, truth always reveals more than the image ever could. Socrates believed that people often reshape their memories to fit the story they want to believe. In relationships, many women retell their past in a way that flatters them and softens their mistakes. Exes become toxic villains. Choices become misunderstood acts of self-love. Drama turns into lessons. This romanticized past is easier to live with and easier to sell to someone new. But it's not truth, it's narrative, and every narrative hides something. This kind of storytelling isn't always conscious, it's a defense mechanism. By repainting her history, she avoids shame and keeps her current image clean. Socrates taught that unexamined lives lead to repeated mistakes. If she hasn't faced her past honestly, she's not evolving, she's escaping. And when you buy into that version, you're not getting a woman who's grown. You're getting a woman who's edited herself for your approval. The danger lies in trusting a history that was crafted, not confessed. If every relationship ended because the man was the problem, that's not honesty, that's strategy. Socrates would ask, where is her accountability? Where is her reflection? A person who can't admit their part in failure isn't ready. For real connection, they're still acting, still selling a fantasy of who they were and who they are now. To protect yourself, ask the uncomfortable questions, not as a judge, but as a seeker of truth, because real intimacy doesn't come from a perfect past. It comes from owning an imperfect one. Socrates didn't just question what was said. He paid close attention to what was left unsaid. In modern relationships, silence can be more manipulative than words. Many women won't lie outright. They'll just omit. They won't tell you about the guy they chased, the situations they created, or the messes they made. Not because they forgot, but because they know certain truths shift how you see them. Strategic silence protects the image without the risk of being caught in a direct lie. This kind of silence is hard to detect because it feels peaceful. There's no drama, no red flags, just smooth stories and safe answers. But Socrates would warn you, a lack of conflict doesn't mean truth. It might mean you're not asking the right questions. Silence isn't always a sign of peace. Sometimes it's a signal of avoidance. And when you're not allowed to explore the full picture, you're being emotionally managed. Strategic silence is especially powerful because it shifts the burden. If a man questions too much, he risks being labeled insecure or paranoid. So he stays quiet. That silence, combined with hers, becomes a trap. Socrates would call this intellectual laziness. When the truth matters, you don't avoid it. You dig for it. And when someone hides behind silence, that's a clue that what's missing is more important than what's said. Real connection comes from transparency, not perfect behavior, but the courage to reveal it all. And that courage begins with refusing to let silence speak louder than truth. Socrates challenged people to take responsibility for their actions. He believed the first step toward wisdom was admitting your role in your own problems. Yet many women retell their past with one common theme. They were always the victim. Every ex was toxic. Every situation just happened to them. Every mistake was someone else's fault. It's a pattern of blame that protects the ego, but blocks growth. And Socrates would call it out immediately. This victim narrative isn't just about avoiding guilt. It's about control. By framing herself as the one who was wronged, she earns sympathy, avoids tough questions, and keeps the moral high ground. It's a subtle way of saying, I did nothing wrong, so don't look too closely. But Socrates taught that true character is revealed through honest reflection, not carefully edited stories. When there's no accountability, there's no depth. Men often fall for this myth because they're trained to be protectors. You hear her pain and want to rescue her. But Socrates would ask, is she really wounded or just avoiding the mirror? If every man in her past is a villain, you're not dating a survivor. You're dating someone who refuses to see her own patterns, and sooner or later, you become the next villain in her story. Only those who own their past can build something real. The eternal victim never changes. She just changes the face of the man she blames. Be the one who questions the narrative before it swallows you. Socrates believed that people lie to themselves before they lie to others. One of the most common ways this happens is through rationalization. Many women explain their past actions not with truth, but with justifications designed to sound virtuous. Cheating becomes a cry for help. Rebounds become self-discovery. Chaos becomes growth. The real reasons, desire, impulsivity, or insecurity, are buried under layers of carefully crafted logic that protects their self-image. These rationalizations are not random. They're rehearsed. They've told these stories before, to friends, therapists, and themselves until even they believe them. But Socrates would ask, what was really driving that decision? Was it truth or convenience? Because when someone can't admit that they acted out of selfishness or emotion, they're not being honest, they're being clever. And cleverness without truth is manipulation in disguise. Men often accept these explanations because they're wrapped in emotional language. She seems vulnerable, she cries, she uses words like growth, trauma, healing. But Socrates wasn't moved by emotion alone. He looked for reason. He wanted clarity, not comfort. If a past mistake can't be admitted plainly, without a long excuse, it hasn't been truly owned. And what hasn't been owned is likely to be repeated. If you want to understand someone, don't just listen to what they say. Ask why they made the choices they made, and then keep asking. Socrates knew that truth only shows up when excuses are stripped away. That's when you meet the real person. Socrates warned us about confusing virtue with clever storytelling. In relationships, many women invert morality by reframing their worst choices as signs of strength. Leaving a loyal man becomes self-love. Breaking trust becomes empowerment. Using others becomes survival. This is moral inversion, when actions that once caused guilt are now celebrated, not because they were right, but because rebranding them removes responsibility, and Socrates would see straight through it. This inversion isn't accidental. It's designed to win admiration while hiding the truth. Instead of saying I was selfish, she says I chose myself. Instead of I hurt someone, she says I found my truth. The language changes, but the behavior doesn't. Socrates believed that calling something good doesn't make it good. If an action causes harm and violates trust, no amount of rewording makes it noble. Men often fall for moral inversion because they admire confidence. A woman who speaks boldly about her past can seem powerful, but Socrates would say, is that power rooted in wisdom or in denial? When someone turns wrong into right with words, they are not wise. They are simply skilled at avoiding shame. And anyone who can do that easily is dangerous in a relationship. Real morality doesn't fear judgment. It embraces accountability. A woman who admits her flaws without trying to make them sound heroic is rare and worth your attention. The one who rewrites history to look good is still trapped in the image she created. Socrates believed that truth without intention is incomplete. Some people reveal personal stories not to connect, but to control. In relationships, many women share selective truths that sound honest but serve a deeper purpose. She tells you about a painful ex to earn sympathy. She admits past mistakes to seem vulnerable, but only the ones that make her look brave. This is not confession, it's manipulation. Dressed as openness, the trick works because men respect honesty. You hear her speak openly and assume she's real. But Socrates would ask, what is her goal? Is she sharing to build trust or to gain power? When honesty is used to steer emotions, it's not virtue, it's strategy. And strategy always has a target. In this case, the target is your perception of her. She wants you to see her as deep, wounded, different from the rest. This kind of manipulation is dangerous because it's hard to confront. If you question it, you look insensitive. If you believe it, you lower your guard. Socrates believed that even the truth could be a weapon if not handled with wisdom. A well-placed tear, a vulnerable moment, a sad story, these are tools. And if used to avoid accountability or create attachment, they're not signs of depth. They're signs of control. Real honesty feels raw, not rehearsed. Socratic truth invites questions, not applause. So when a woman opens up, don't just listen to what she says. Ask why she's saying it and what she's hoping you'll feel. Socrates believed that wisdom begins with the courage to ask, not the easy questions, the uncomfortable ones. In relationships, most men avoid these questions because they fear the answers. They don't ask how many partners she's had. They don't ask what really happened with her ex. They don't ask why she repeats certain patterns. Not because they don't care, but because deep down, they're afraid the truth might hurt more than the illusion. But Socrates would say that fear of truth is fear of reality, and a man who avoids reality gives up his power. When you don't ask, you don't know, and what you don't know will eventually cost you. The strength of a relationship isn't measured by how peaceful it feels in the beginning. It's measured by how much truth it can hold. And truth only shows up when you're willing to dig for it. Asking uncomfortable questions isn't about interrogation. It's about clarity. It's about saying, I want to know who I'm really dealing with. Socrates never assumed anything. He challenged every claim, even when it made people uncomfortable. And in dating, that mindset protects you. Because once the mask falls, you see the human being behind it, not the version she wanted you to believe in. Real connection starts with real questions, not the ones designed to flatter, but the ones that uncover. The man who dares to ask is the man who refuses to be fooled. That is Socratic masculinity, calm, direct, unafraid. Socrates believed that desire without truth leads to illusion. In modern relationships, many men chase women based on image, fantasy, or emotional highs. But real masculine desire isn't built on illusion. It's built on clarity. A man grounded in truth doesn't fall for beauty alone. He wants to know what's behind the eyes, what decisions she's made, what truth she owns. Because without that, desire becomes blindness, and blindness always leads to regret. When a man values truth, he sees through performance. He's not seduced by curated stories or strategic vulnerability. He listens, but he also questions. He connects, but he also observes. Socrates taught that love must involve reason, not just emotion. A woman who hides, twists, or glamorizes her past cannot be trusted with your future. And if you're serious about becoming the man you were meant to be, you cannot build on lies. This kind of desire is different. It's calm, focused, selective. It doesn't chase approval. It seeks alignment. It says, I desire you not because you're flawless, but because you're real. Socratic desire isn't passive. It's active truth-seeking. It's the strength to walk away from fantasy and wait for reality. It's knowing that beauty fades, words lie, but character always reveals itself over time. A man who desires with wisdom becomes a threat to manipulation. He can't be tricked, bought, or seduced with half-truths. He wants what is honest, even if it's rare, because in a world full of masks, the one who seeks truth is always in control. So now the question is this: do you have the courage to seek truth, even when it challenges the story you want to believe? Socrates didn't promise comfort. He promised clarity. And in relationships, clarity is the foundation of strength. The 5 lies women often tell about their past aren't always spoken to deceive. But if you don't question them, you're choosing illusion over insight. Real men don't fear the truth. They demand it. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe now. There's more where this came from, and the next truth might change everything.